Hi, this is Jerry Williams, and if you are a loyal listener of FBI Retired Case File Review, I guess you're saying to yourself, hey, what happened to the theme music? But today is a special episode, and the first thing I have to do is give a special thanks to Gangland Wire podcast co-host Gary Jenkins and Aaron Gnirk. Gary and Aaron have allowed me to repost this episode from their show. I was interviewed on Gangland Wire podcast in October 2017, and it was such a fun and crazy episode that I thought I would share it with you here. Gary is a former intelligence unit detective with the Kansas City Police Department, and as you may recall, on episode 87 of my podcast, I interviewed him and retired agent Bill Owsley about the FBI's investigation of the Kansas City mob. Now, for this Philadelphia strip club corruption case, the main thing that you need to know is that before Harvey Weinstein, there was Frank Antico. This case features extortion, sex, money, and more, and a case review is certainly timely and relevant. You will be shocked at some of Frank Antico's antics. But one important disclaimer, this is not my case. It was worked by two special agent friends of mine in the Philadelphia division. But I know this case well because it is one of the strip club investigations that inspired me to write my FBI crime thriller, Pay to Play. After you listen to this bonus episode, you can go to my website, jerrywilliams.com, to look at a photo of Frank Antico and to check out links to newspaper articles about this case. I hope you share it with your friends, family, and associates. At the bottom of the episode show notes, you'll find all the social media share buttons. And of course, if you're listening to this on a podcast app, you can share it directly from your device. There's one last thing I need you to do, and that is to give Gary, Aaron, and Gangland Wire podcast some love by going to their website, ganglandwire.com, or any of the popular podcast apps, and check out Gangland Wire podcast. I will be back next week with episode 98 of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. Thank you. Now here's the show.
On the advice of my lawyer, I respectfully refuse to answer that question, as my truthful answer may tend to incriminate me.
Former Kansas City Police Department intelligence detective and now attorney Gary Jenkins produced 4 documentary films, most recently Gangland Wire, creator of smartphone app entitled Kansas City Mob Tours. Download it now. If you like what you hear, go to ganglandwire.com. Navigate to the shop page. We need you to put a hit out on our donate button. Gangland Wire True Crime Stories is produced at the Big Dumb Fun Show Studio 4. And now, here's Gary Jenkins.
Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to Gangland Wire, all you wiretappers out there. I'm here with my good friend Aaron in the basement of the old Ice House building in Midtown, Kansas City. Say hello to everybody, Aaron.
Hello, Aaron.
Anyhow, we are here tonight. We have a special guest, a fellow podcaster who I've gotten to know over the last year or so. Has a podcast somewhat similar to ours. We always say from the mouths of the men that did it. Well, tonight we're going to have to say from one of the ladies who did it.
The mouth of the woman that did it.
The mouth of the woman that did it. This is Jerry Williams. She is a retired FBI agent, a podcaster, and crime fiction author. Say hello to everybody, Jerry.
Well, hello, everybody.
Well, we're really happy to have you. You know, I was on your podcast, myself and Bill Owsley, who is a kind of a frequent guest on this show, and we had a great time. We're looking forward to hearing ourselves talk as guests on a podcast.
It was a great episode. Yeah.
Good. I hope you get a lot of downloads for it. You'll probably triple your downloads after they hear me and Bill are going to be on there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're hoping it works the same way when we talk about having Jerry Williams on Gangland Wire.
Really? Although sometimes you get so many listeners.
Oh, quadruple. It's quadruple.
So we're going to go from 20 to 60.
We're going to get some of those East Coast people. You know, Jerry, I usually talk about, well, somewhat about Kansas City, but when I go outside of Kansas City, it's been mainly Chicago and Las Vegas, because that's where a lot of my experience has been. And did a little bit on California. I've done a little bit on New York. I've not done anything on Philadelphia. I'm gonna get somebody from Philadelphia that worked the mob scene quite a little bit here pretty soon. I've started talking to him, but and that's where you served a lot of your career, and that's where this case happened. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I served in the Philadelphia office of the FBI for 24 of my 26 years in the FBI.
Wow, so you had a first office, and then you always get a first office, and then you get transferred. Was that your choice to go to Philadelphia?
Yes, but they didn't know it.
That was smart.
You know, the way they do it the way they do it in the FBI is that you put your 3 top choices on a list, and, you know, you send it in to the transfer office, and then usually they look at that list and they give you something totally different. It just happened that the date that I sent in my request was the same date as my letter came out. So they just passed through the mail. And if they had known that Philly was my number one choice, I'm sure I would have ended up in, you know, Miami or something. But I love Philly.
What was their first year then?
When I came in to the FBI, there was some issue with transfer money. So everybody went back to the office where they were originally from for 6 months, and then they got transferred out. So I actually did 6 months in Norfolk, Virginia, because I'm from Hampton, Virginia. And then from Norfolk, I went out to Sacramento, California, for a year and a half. And I guess they must have gotten some transfer money, because after only a year and a half, I got sent back across country to Philadelphia.
Wow, that's...
And Sacramento was a great office.
Is it normal then to stay in an office for 24 years?
Yeah, absolutely. You go to a smaller, medium-sized office, and you can stay there from, you know, a year to 5 years, and then you're usually sent to a large office. And unless you do something to trigger a transfer, such as apply for some type of a position outside of the office, other than that, you know, you're going to stay in that large office for the majority of your career. I love Philly. I met my husband in this area. I had 3 kids, and, you know, I decided to stay put.
Well, there is plenty of crime in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I would imagine.
Well, when it comes to fraud and corruption, I think that we do pretty well, and that's what I did for a majority of my career. I was on the economic crime squad, and I did advanced fee schemes. I did Ponzi schemes, business-to-business telemarketing fraud, you know, anything that had to do with cheating, lying, and stealing. I did it, and I was kept very, very busy in the Philadelphia area. Yeah, so advanced fee is really just like it says. They try to get money from people by promising them something of value. They're defrauding them, and they're doing it by getting the money in advance. And then, of course, never following through with what they promised.
As a lawyer, a friend of mine had a business he was really hurting. This happened just before the big crash in 2008. And he was about to go down because he was trying to build a new building. He was trying to amp up his business, and he got a lot of money from a bank, and then he ran out of money, and he needed more money. And the 2008 crash, it wasn't here yet, but it was starting. A banker that he was dealing with in a legitimate bank turned him on to this company that he said, these guys might get you a loan. They claim that they can get loans for anybody, no matter even if they're already a little bit overextended. And he said, well, he was desperate. He said, let's try it. And so I got on the phone. We did a conference call with them, and they were full of all kinds of promises and said they had all kinds of different banks, these oddball-sounding banks from around the United States that were wanting to invest like $500,000, but there was going to be an advance fee before they would do anything more. So yeah, you're laughing, aren't you? You know what? I knew what it was too. And so I told this guy, I said, I tell you what, he was already getting mad at me because I was asking him hard questions. I said, if you will get us 2 people that have gotten loans through you for their business, and we can call them and talk to them, we may go for this. And my buddy was hooked. He thought they were going to get him the money. And finally I convinced him. I said, not now. Wait, make them give us these numbers. So if they got mad and hung up, about a week later, they called him, and when I wasn't there, and they gave him a couple of names and numbers. And then I didn't hear from him for another month or so. And then he calls me back, or I call him back, I think, and ask him how it's going. And he said, I called one of these guys, and he said, it was weird. He said, actually, he called both numbers. One number nobody ever answered, and the other number he finally got somebody, but he said it was just weird. He said the guy didn't seem to really know what I was talking about. And so, and Jerry, I think he upped like $1,200 or something to these guys, thinking that they were going to help him in the end. He never would admit it to me, but he got real quiet about the whole deal, and of course he ended up losing. They never got him any money, but that's an advance fee scheme. If I ever saw one, there probably somebody you would have investigated.
Oh yeah, that's the type of thing that I used to investigate. And what you're saying, that story plays out over and over again because people get desperate. And when they get desperate, they can be led to believe anything that sounds promising. So they're drowning and somebody is throwing them a lifeline and they grab it. And, they don't care what it is, they're just grabbing for it. And, that's what's so sad about most frauds, most schemes, is that they are taking advantage of people who are desperate.
Yeah, really.
It's really sad. Wait till you see the number of frauds and schemes that come out of the tragedy in Houston.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Unbelievable. And it happened during Sandy, here in New York and New Jersey. Whenever there is a tragedy, there are these unscrupulous people who are waiting to exploit that tragedy.
Yeah, it usually starts with the roofers and the home repair people and goes on up from there, more than likely.
Hey, and don't buy a used car from Houston anytime soon.
There will be some flood. There will be some flood damaged cars.
Yeah, it's got a salvage title on it. But, but you didn't have large natural disasters in Philadelphia that were causing people to do these Ponzi schemes and advance pay schemes. What was the meat that you really worked on when it came to having cases come up over and over again?
Well, I hate to say this, and if there's anybody from Philadelphia, I apologize, but getting something for nothing is kind of a cultural thing in Philly. Unfortunately, in this area, scams and corruption, are pretty prevalent. Just in the last year, not only was a congressman out of Philadelphia convicted of corruption, but also the district attorney of Philadelphia, just in the last couple of months, was tried and convicted of corruption. So, when you get to that level, you can see how that trickles down to someone like Frank Antico, who I want to talk to you about today. He was a licensing and inspection official in Philadelphia. This was a number of years ago, but it was a fascinating case. Now, let me say this. Let me tell you two things, two disclaimers before we start talking about this case. First of all, it was not my case. I worked economic fraud, which is economic crime, which is fraud and corruption in corporations and individuals. This was a public corruption case. We all did the same thing, but this squad and the agents who worked this case looked into public officials. But it was such a fascinating case, and it was such a headline case every day there was something in the paper, that I gathered those newspaper articles and I followed that case and I talked to the agents and I said, hey, look, do you guys think you'll ever write a book about this? And they looked at me like I was crazy. We're not writing any books. And I said, okay, I'd like to write a book about this. So I had a chance to sit down with them. I collected all the newspaper articles and, I really know this case. So I'd love to talk to you about that today.
That'd be great. That's your book is Pay to Play, and I'm going to read just a little bit about the book from your website. By the way, folks, she has a website, jerrywilliams.com. That's JERRIWILLIAMS.com. And she also, if you'll sign up and subscribe to it, you will get a newsletter from Jerry periodically, which is a really interesting newsletter. Now, here's what the book's about, and she's going to talk about the case behind this book. When Carrie Wheeler, a female FBI agent investigating corruption in the Philadelphia strip club industry, is blackmailed by a one-night stand she picked up in one of the clubs, how far will she go to stop him from destroying her career and her marriage? So I doubt if that really exactly happened to an agent in real life, but it looks like you're talking about corrupt city officials accepting bribes and breaking the adult entertainment laws. So go ahead and start telling us about that case, Jerry.
All right. And I do want to give you a distinction between the book, the crime fiction book, and the case. The case, of course, as you mentioned, was about this corrupt city official. The agents who were investigating that case were two very attractive female agents, some good friends of mine, and just the thought of these two agents, walking into strip clubs and talking to strip clubs owners and the strippers, I just found very interesting. But as we know, that to really make a good crime novel, the crime novel can't just be about how cops work on the cases. It's got to be how the cases work on the cops. And so I created this female agent character who had some issues that came to the surface as she is going in and out of these strip clubs and these, tantalizing and tempting situations. So the female FBI agent character is not true. And it is especially, I must say, my husband makes me say this, it is not me.
That was my next question. No, I'm just kidding you. I know it wasn't you. But I understand that. I've worked strip clubs undercover, and I tell you what, the temptations are out there when you're young and you're drinking while you're doing this stuff. And I've seen I never fell, but I've seen other policemen fall. Usually it's a dude that gets involved in this kind of stuff. It's kind of interesting.
All right, so let me get into the case, because it really is a fascinating case. So the name of the subject is Frank Antico. And I know, your podcast is Gangland Wire. And, Frank Antico, he lived in South Philly, but he claimed to have mob ties. But then again, everybody who lives in South Philly claims to have mob ties when it's convenient. I can tell you that Frank Antico was, again, a city official. He was the second highest ranking officer in their licensing and inspections division. And basically, what he did was he abused every single law that he was supposed to be enforcing. So he was in charge of all businesses. The licensing and inspections, would go in and out of businesses to make sure that they were following the rules. And one of those businesses, groups of businesses, were strip clubs. Frank took those for himself. He loved to hang out in strip clubs. And, like I said, he basically just ruined, the whole situation, going into these strip clubs and ignoring everything they were doing in exchange for free sex, free food, free tickets. He would take anything in exchange for looking the other way. And he had been doing this for years. Everybody knew Frank Antico. The thing about being an inspector in Philadelphia is that you had a lot of power because, if you went into a business and you felt that they weren't operating under regulation, you could shut them down just like that. And so it was very easy for inspectors to abuse their power. And, that's what he did.
These strip clubs, were they mob-connected strip clubs?
Well, in Philly, at that time, because this happened in the 90s. And at that time, the Philadelphia mob was very strong. Again, there was rumors that he had mob ties, but, other than his wise guy swagger, I'm not sure if that was ever proven. But definitely there were strip clubs in the Philadelphia area that were mob connected.
Well, but you said he was the second highest ranking official, right?
Yes. He had a boss.
He had a boss. And his boss was never convicted of anything? Never had to wet his beak, so to speak?
No, I don't think the boss was ever alleged that his boss was involved in accepting bribes. It was alleged that he had heard the rumors about Frank Antico and that he never did anything about it. But there was nothing, there was no indication whatsoever that his boss was involved in any of this criminal behavior. But like I said, Frank had been in that position at this time, for most of his adult life, 40 years. And he had just grown very, very powerful. The thing about licensing and inspection, if you have a business and you need something done, you need a permit, and you're trying to get this approved, and it's taking too long, if you could just give somebody a couple of $100 to speed things up, business people, time is money, and they're willing to pay to erase the time. In Philly, it's called, shaking hands. You learn how to shake hands with an inspector. You know how to give them a little bit of lunch money. I don't know if it's going on now. I certainly want to put that out there. I'm just talking about in the 1990s when this case took place. It was very prevalent. People were willing to cut corners and to pay bribes in order to get work done.
So, Jerry, then the FBI opens a case on this guy.
Well, let me start a little earlier than that, because again, I told you he'd been doing this for years. So why all of a sudden did his name come to the attention of the FBI? And I can tell you it's because he did two things. Well, first of all, he was a cheater. He was married and had two grown sons with his wife, and he also had a mistress, and he had two sons with her. And, it's kind of hard to raise up two families. And so definitely, taking bribes and kickbacks was a way that he made a little extra money so he could support the two families. A lot of people knew about that. But that was his way of supporting this lifestyle, and he did it for years. Two things that he did that caused him to bring negative attention to himself is that he decided to bring his son into the family business, strip clubs business, and he convinced or extorted a job for his son in a strip club. And then when that son got a little bit of experience, he started to help his son open up his own strip club. And he went so far as to lobby city officials and lobby the business community in the area in order to get a zoning variance for his son. The conflict of interest was just unbelievable. I mean, here's the guy that's in charge of licensing and inspection and enforcement for strip clubs, and he is lobbying people to get a zoning variance so his son can open his own strip club. So, of course, that brought a lot of negative attention to him. And then there was Boobgate.
Boobgate. Well, you got to explain that one.
There were the mayors, the two aides for the mayor of Philadelphia, and it was Ed Rendell at the time, decided they wanted to have a stag party. Now, I don't know if it was a bachelor party or what, but they wanted to have some female entertainment. And who do they ask to bring this female entertainment to the party? Frank Antico.
Of course, the guy who has control over the strip clubs.
He's going to bring in licensed girls.
Yeah.
These are professionals.
Exactly. He's going to bring the very best these are, again, major aides to the mayor of Philadelphia, so they deserve the very best.
Yeah.
And, of course, it gets leaked out to the media, and it becomes the Boobgate scandal. And at that point, now he's got two black eyes. There's people upset because of a conflict of interest, where he's trying to get his son the ability to open up a strip club. And now they find that he is bringing strippers to a party. And so much attention is brought to Frank Antico that people start talking. I kind of look at it as his enemies started to smell the blood in the water. And they thought, after all these years, this guy has been extorting us and taking our money and giving us a hard time. Now is the time to strike to bring him down. And that's what he did. That's what they did. It was like the last straw. He can see that things are not going well for him. So at this point, he's been in the business, working for the city for years. And so he retires. And he basically retires because he knows things are not going to go well for him, and he wants to get out and save his pension before things go too bad. But he can hear that the feds are starting to ask questions, that people are starting to talk about the kickbacks, the bribery. He actually would force his mistress, in order for him not to have to pay child support, he got her a job as what they call an expediter. Basically, it's someone that helped people go through the permit process. So, I talked about how the process sometimes was just so labor-intensive in Philadelphia that you could actually hire somebody to do it for you. And his girlfriend had that job, so he would force people to use her, another conflict of interest. So, like I said, it got to a point that he was so bold with his illegal and criminal activity that people just couldn't take it anymore. And when his name started showing up in the paper because of these scandals, the feds jumped on it. And I say the feds, the FBI, my friends in the Philadelphia division, jumped on it and started their investigation.
They opened a case on this guy as he's the target. Would that be a fair way to characterize that?
Yes, he is the target. I think at this time, he is the only target. They're concentrating on his activities. And so they're talking to those club owners. They're talking to the strippers who sometimes gave him the payments. They're talking to anybody and everybody in Philadelphia who had to deal with Frank Antico. And one of the things that happened is that the mayor had been somebody who defended him. Even in the Boobgate, they kind of defended him for a little bit. What's the big deal? It was just a party. But because Frank didn't just retire and go away quietly, because he was very mouthy, and it became such an embarrassment to the mayor, I think that was one of the things, too, that kind of triggered this investigation. I read a quote that said that if Frank Antico had just kept his mouth shut and retired quietly, that the mayor probably would have come to his retirement party. But because he was just so bold, he was so bold with this that, the witnesses came forward and they talked about Frank accepting free food and drink and sex in exchange, and of course money, in exchange for ignoring all the zoning and business code violations that he was supposed to, come up with, mark them on. So he was actually indicted in May of 1998. It was a 40-page indictment, and he was charged with racketeering, extortion, wire fraud. It was an 18-count indictment. They talked about the conflict of him steering business to his mistress. And basically, during trial, she found out about all of his other girlfriends, and she ended up testifying against him.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
Did his son get his strip club
That's
opened
the
up?
truth.
Yeah, let's go back. What about the Sun strip club? Is that operating all this time?
Yes. And one of the other charges, this is so funny, and I do I actually opened the book with this. But one of the funny things that he did on the opening night of his son's strip club, Frank Antico had his inspectors raid the clubs around him, shut it down, all the competitors. So people had to go to the opening night of his son's club.
That guy.
I think I can smell conflict of interest again.
That guy is one bold dude. That was one arrogant son of a gun.
Sounds like a real entrepreneur.
Yes. He knows how to stifle competition.
He knows how to make it rain. I think that would be the technical term.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It was raining dollar bills
inside a strip club.
I mean, no wonder they had, all the other strip club people probably went back around and were like, hey, wait a second. Now that his son's got a club and we got closed down, we really need to do something about this.
No wonder people were lining up to testify against this guy. I could see that. He brought that all on himself. Well, you indicated that some female agents did some undercover work on that. Did they get jobs as strippers? I can't imagine that, but
no. And people ask me that all the time. And actually, when I was looking for an agent, and luckily I found one. My agent didn't ask me to put such a ridiculous thing in the book. But when I was looking for an agent, one agent said to me, this book would be so much better if the FBI agent would go undercover as a stripper. And I told her, yeah, but her credibility on the stand when she had to testify probably would be really tainted, when she had to talk about how she had to take off her clothes and do lap dance. That's not going to work. It doesn't work that way.
It's her credibility on stage that matters. Somebody might go, man, she's such a bad dancer. She must be an agent. I mean, I don't know how they didn't catch Gary Jenkins sitting at the bar, figuring him to be a cop, but they're not paying attention out there. And certainly, Frank Antico, definitely one of the people not really paying attention.
Really? So, and actually, I've had a few undercovers work with me, and I knew a few FBI agents, and I can't imagine any FBI agent or police officer, female FBI agent or female police officer that would ever do that, would consent to do something like that. And nobody certainly would ever order him to do that. So, you're right. That would take the reader clear out of the moment in the book to have something so far out like that it's not even based in any kind of reality.
Well, wait a second. Here's a reality. Is there any male strip clubs in Philadelphia that Frank had to get a license to?
I'm sure there were. I don't think I don't think he spent his own personal time in those clubs, but I'm sure he was a equal opportunity kickbacker. He would take money from anybody. Yes, indeed.
But if anybody was going to have to go in undercover to remove their clothes, that seemed like there's a lot more male agents than female agents out there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You might find a male agent or a male copper that would do that, but I kind of doubt that too.
He would come out in the male cop costume. It would be so authentic.
Yeah, really.
He really did seem like a cop up there. Normally, we're very much more serious than this. Give folks the name of your podcast again. I know we said it at the beginning, but we're 35, 40 minutes in, and we don't want people to forget. We're talking with retired FBI agent Jerry Williams, and she has a book,
Pay to Play,
and a podcast called
FBI Retired Case File Review. Shows like Gangland Wire and FBI Retired Case File Review bring you the true stories from the people that work the cases. And, we just are really appreciative. I know I am. I'm sure you are too, Gary, of the people who are interested in learning about our careers and what law enforcement really does. Not TV, not the movie version, but what really happens. You guys are doing a great job with Gangland Wire, too.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, sometimes I think people are a little bit disappointed when they hear the real story. But, that's what it is. That's what we're doing is the real story. And sometimes they're amazed when they hear the real story.
Well, and Gary's not afraid to let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, you never let the truth get in the way. The facts get in the way of a good story. Oh, I don't stretch it too much, Aaron. Just a little bit once in a while if I can't think of something.
I mean, it is from the mouth of the men and the women now.
And the women who did it.
The deeds, if you will. And it's always an honor to get to work with Gary and talk to people like you who have done this work for 25 and more years, serving the country, serving the community, and really, you're the real superheroes out there. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and it's an honor for me.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Jerry. I think, are we about to the end of is there anything more you want to say about that case? What kind of time did this guy get? And
18 counts. How many did he land with?
He ended up with 63 months. Now, I did read that there was a hearing where he was asking for a reduction. I don't know if he ever got that, but 63 months, 5.5 years, that's still pretty good. He was, in his 60s, and he had been living the good life for, most of his adult life, and to end up behind jail, I'm sure was, pretty devastating for him.
It would have been. What about his son's strip club? Did it end up closing down?
I don't know. I don't know, but the son had learned a lot from the father, so he had all the education and expertise to make a real go at it. So I doubt if it folded. It probably did extremely well based on the information that he had to make it the best it could be.
Yeah, that whole strip club thing, I kind of, when that started, that all changed. Back in the old days, they had burlesque shows. So it's always been around for a long time. And then we had the dirty movies. There's always been this sex industry, shall we say, that's just rides that gray line between actual sex for hire, prostitution, and not prostitution, shall we say. But they always have these clubs, and then we went into the 70s, and then we had go-go dancers, and girls they'd hire girls, mainly drug addicts and people with other kinds of issues, shall we say, to get up on a kind of like a pedestal and dance like you would see in the go-go bars. But these were more than guys. At some point in time, they started throwing dollar bills up there and sticking dollar bills in their G-string, and then it advanced on to the private dances, the lap dances, and it's just law enforcement kind of kept adjusting. And I remember sending guys into the strip clubs when they first started going without tops. So there was against the city ordinance that somebody had to have some kind of a top on. I think they called them pasties. And so we sent a guy in. The city council wanted to see what this looked like, and if they were wearing tops, and if they weren't, how was this being conducted? So we wired a guy all up put a camera, put the lens in a fake cast, and then ran it up to a sending unit he had on his body and sent the signal and the video and the audio out to a van out front. And so he would, everywhere he'd point his hand, it would take pictures of the girls and what they did. So we did that to show the city council. They were struggling with trying to figure out how to regulate these things. And of course, what we didn't know at the time, we had a couple of city council people that were taking some kickbacks and some bribes themselves. Now, they never got popped for that directly. They got popped for some other bribery activities at the same time. So it's I think every major city has seen that kind of a progression and that kind of corruption that comes along with the strip club industry. And I know in Kansas City it became a big moneymaker for the local mob family. They had 2 strip clubs that were the more popular ones. Actually, I think they had 3 at one time. And it's a good way to wash money too, because it's all cash money that's flowing through there. So it's an interesting phenomenon, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this case is not unique. I talked about, this case in Philadelphia that was investigated by the FBI involving strip clubs. Strip clubs have always been magnets for criminal behavior. In addition to the drugs you mentioned and organized crime, there's violence, there's prostitution. They have complex investigations involving overbilling and tax fraud. You got human trafficking. And, of course, organized crime. So, they've always been a target for the FBI and for law enforcement. That's not to say that all strip clubs have criminal elements, but I'm just saying that they're ripe, as you mentioned, for criminal elements to get involved. And, when that happens, the FBI and FBI agents and the detectives and state troopers that work with us on a daily basis will be happy to go into a strip club and gather evidence.
Yeah, really. And a lot of people would laugh, say, "Oh, yeah, I bet you like working undercover in those." But to be quite honest, I went into a few of them, and to me it was sad and sleazy, and I felt dirty. I had to go home and take a shower as soon as I got off of work that night. So it's I don't know, it's not a glamorous industry, although some people would try to promote it as such.
Kind of describes my book, Pay to Play. So if anybody is interested in it, if you don't like profanity, if you get embarrassed by, some type of sexual activity, don't read Pay to Play. I call it raw. My mother-in-law would say, it's a little racy, Jerry. It's also gritty, but, I based it, mother-in-laws, but I based it on not just his Frank Antico case. I should be clear on that. I based it on a number of FBI cases involving strip clubs. I provide, a little review, a summary of some of those cases that I used to gather the information to make it authentic, to make it real. But this Frank Antico case was what started it all. He really was a guy with a lot of swagger who really abused his power in order to get free sex, money, and whatever he wanted.
Mm-hmm. Did he get, after his 63 months, he probably didn't get his job back, did he?
No, but remember, he had retired anyway. But I do think they were fighting to take his pension from him. I don't know what happened with that. But he had retired. He saw the writing on the wall, so he retired before he was convicted. But he did have, a wife at home who would be depending on his pension. I mean, she wasn't guilty of doing anything except for loving a cheater. I'm not sure what happened with that, but.
All right. Well, I think we've pretty well done this, Jerry. I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about the backstory behind Pay to Play. Folks, be sure and look that book up. You can get it on Kindle or in paperback, I guess, at Amazon. And
an audiobook. So you can get all the information that you want about the podcast, FBI Retired Case File Review, the book, Pay to Play, on my website, which is jerrywilliams.com.
Great. Good night, Jerry.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
You're welcome.
Well, Aaron, that was most interesting. I've never worked a public corruption case. I kind of worked around one with some city officials once. There's kind of an interesting little side story. I didn't say this. I mentioned something about we had a couple of city councilmen, but we had one of them. What was that guy's name? Mike got hold of us, and he claimed that he was being threatened by the mob. So he wanted to meet with myself and my captain. He went through the chief's office. Of course, he's a city councilman. He can do that. So we go meet with him, and he said, I was in a meeting the other day, and it was about a new strip club that was going to open up and strip club licensing, and we were trying to discuss about ordinances. And then about 2 or 3 days later, this other city councilman who I think might be taking some bribes, he seemed to know exactly what we were talking about in that meeting. He said, I think my office is bugged. He said, we had the meeting in my office, so would you guys sweep it? So we said, well, sure, we'll go sweep it for you. And we swept his office. And we had a machine that would look for anything that would send out a radio signal, and then you take the phone apart and just examine the phone on the inside, and you take the covers off of the outlets, the electrical outlets, and any lamps or anything. You look at them real close, and we couldn't find anything.
You had a black bag guy.
We had a black bag guy who actually, if we'd ever installed anything, he would have been the one that did it. We did do one wiretap, and he climbed the pole and hooked all that up, but it was a legal wiretap. Anyhow, so we had Larry Fisher go in and do that. And as we agreed before, if he finds anything, we don't tell the city councilman until we go check with the FBI, because we weren't going to rat out the FBI if they had something in there. We didn't find anything. And we didn't find out till it was about, 7 or 8 months later. Then he gets hold of me and he wants to meet me down the plaza at a restaurant. And it's a Sunday night. He had my home phone. And so I go down there, and then he doesn't want to sit in the restaurant. He wants to walk around and talk. And he's like making all these kind of fantastic claims about some mob guy that's threatening him, and this other city councilman taking bribes, and just kind of, it was almost off the wall stuff. And I go back and I tell the boss, and we've told the FBI about this. And well, what we didn't know all along is the FBI did have a public corruption case going on this guy. When they do a public corruption case, they will not tell local policemen, even no matter how tight they work with you, unless they need you for something.
Unless they bring you in on it.
Unless they need you to be part of it for some reason, they're not going to ever admit it that they're doing a public corruption case. It's kind of part of their rules, because it's so rife for gossip, and a person could take that and run around to other people in the city government and use it to maybe to help somebody else's career or something. You just don't ever tell anybody. The Bureau would never tell anybody. And it finally came out about a year later that what that guy was doing was he wasn't worried about his other city council guy bugging his office. He was worried. He wanted us, under the subterfuge, to sweep his office to see if there's any FBI bugs in there. And that's why he met me and wanted to walk around and talk outside, because he knew he was under investigation. So he was frantically trying to act like he was doing something to help the police, and he didn't want it recorded. He didn't want any actual recordings of this. He just wanted me to maybe have some, if I was wired, to have some garbled up tape of us walking around the plaza talking.
But if you walked around the plaza with him and he talked to you, it's not really in confidence. You're going to take that back to your superior.
Yeah, he knew that. He expected me to do that. He expected me to then tell the FBI that he was really working with us, trying to help us. That was his little plan.
So what you're saying is maybe the black bag guy did find a bug, but he couldn't even tell you.
No, he would have, but we would have told the Bureau and then asked them what they wanted to do with it.
Also, he stops looking at one point. He's like, okay.
So that's
we don't need to look anymore. The thing that we never got the name of was the Sun Strip Club in Philadelphia.
No, we didn't.
Sounded like he was able to open it up. Sounded like he probably had some good coaching as to how to operate a strip club.
Yeah, well, he did. If you have a friend or relative who has a problem with drugs or alcohol, make your first call to First Call. Call 816-361-5900 or go to the website, www.firstcallkc.org. What do you got to say to that, Aaron?
I've got to say, folks, you need to go out and get the documentary that started it all, Gangland Wire, available for purchase on Amazon. And then you also need to get the app, Kansas City Mob Tour, for $1.99. Get on your iPhone and take your own personalized tour of notorious mob locations in and around Kansas City. While you're listening to the great episodes of Gangland Wire, we have over 150 of them now, I believe.
At least.
Or right at about 150. It was 140 just 2 months ago. You need to get Gary's latest edition, his book, Leaving Vegas.
How FBI wiretaps ended mob domination of Las Vegas casinos.
And watch for him on the Travel Channel.
Yeah. Mysteries at the Museum. It'll be coming up soon. I don't know when. Watch for the one about the mob museum. I'm in it.
The Las Vegas Mob Museum.
All right. Say goodnight, Aaron.
Good night, Aaron. Bumper music provided by Odd-O-Matic. Find them on Twitter at Odd-O-Matic Music. Hi, it's Aaron from Gangland Wire. When Gary's not here, I break open the beef jerky, But not just any jerky. I break open the Jurassic Jerky. That's right. Go on over to JurassicJerkyLLC.com and put in your order for some tasty snack meat treats. If you love beef jerky, then you've got to get the carnivore candy from Jurassic Jerky. Put in the promo code GANG10 and you'll get 10% off the entire purchase order. There's my order coming in now.